Welcome to the BYOD podcast. Bring your own directions. My name is Björn, co-CEO of Resolution, and in this show, where every guest sets their own path, sharing insights and ideas about agile topics and the Atlassian ecosystem. All this is proudly sponsored by NASA, not another stand-up app, the Atlassian Marketplace app that makes agile ceremonies, stand-ups, planning sessions not just efficient, but also enjoyable. So please stand by. So today with me is Chris Boyce from Umano. So Chris is CEO from Umano. He founded Umano, and I'm super happy to learn today a little bit more about his journey so far and about his challenges in the future. So hello, Chris. Hi, how are you?
Hello, Bjorn. I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. It's much earlier for me as for you. So we are doing this at the moment. For me, it's 8-ish in the morning, and for you, it's
It's about 7 p.m. down in Sydney.
perfect. So, okay, one podcast all over the world. So, thanks a lot for joining today. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's the only time of the day where we can meet, or it's for me in the morning and for you in the afternoon/evening.
Global distributed teams, Bjorn. It's the way forward, dude.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, tell us a little bit more what you're doing. So, you said already this distributed teams. So, but what is Umano doing, and what are you doing?
Yeah, sure thing. So, Umano is a team performance tool in the space of DevX. We help teams using their data to understand their ways of working so that they know exactly where they're at, make data informed or data inspired decisions to optimize, reduce friction, and ultimately perform at their best. The only caveat to that is that we explicitly support software engineering teams. So I mentioned DevX. What is DevX? DevX is all about developer experience. It's ultimately how do we create environments, cultures, and experience for developers so that they're performing at their best sustainably and doing so with joy in creating their best work for their customers. That's what we do.
Okay, sounds complex. So what is a classic use case? So what is your
Okay,
typical
so
customer?
you bet. Most simply, it's an automated feedback loop. What does that mean? It means that we are an intelligence layer sitting on top of the software developer tool stack. We analyze data from the team's daily interactions with their tools so that using a catalog of metrics that visualizes how they work across their entire end-to-end workflow from designing to building to reviewing each other's work to then deploying it, all underpinned by collaboration and engagement. We visualize that for teams in a dashboard so that they can see with their own benchmarks against those metrics where they're overperforming, underperforming, and then really uniquely through a digital agent called Ojo, we're providing AI-based observations and guidance to really help teams move from simply knowing where they're at to take action to improve their unique aspects to performance. So in that continuous feedback loop, we take data, we analyze it against a set of metrics, and then we have an AI agent that says, here's where you're doing really well. Here's where you could potentially focus to improve. And that's the tool. So the use case is really helping software delivery teams in their end-to-end cycle in an agile context. That means planning ceremonies. It means daily course correction through stand-ups And then it means in their retro ceremonies where they really strengthen that learning muscle of what they did well or could do differently, we're inserting insights from their data at each stage to make better informed decisions. So planning-based decisions to help them plan more accurately and predictably. Mid-sprint or mid-iteration decisions to help them course correct, realign stakeholder engagement, or capacity plan, whatever the priorities might look like based on their progress to plan. And then in the context of reviewing and retrospecting, not only are we providing the quantitative insights based on their performance against the metric catalog that they have, we're also enabling them to capture qualitative context and data through what we call team vibes. So it's like quick pulse check surveys, as well as classic agile retro of what do we do well, what can we do differently, and what do we need to stop doing. So it's that context of and feelings of how we think we're performing, matched then with the quantitative facts of how we actually are performing as measured by these catalog of metrics.
Okay.
Insights from which then inserted to improve how we plan, track, and review in that agile cycle of continuous improvement and delivery.
Okay. So you mentioned Ojo. So my mind is mostly when you say AI, then okay, what is it? And you said Ojo is giving recommendations to okay, that's what your metrics is saying, or your KPIs are achieved or not achieved, or whatever, or your decrease, increase, and so on. Ojo generates a recommendation, I assume based on the metrics and the KPIs and so on. So who is a targeted persona for these recommendations? Is it the developers in the team? Is it the Scrum Master or project lead, or who is it?
So it's ultimately for the leader and manager of the team. Now, that can take some different shapes or personas in different working environments and contexts. As you well know, Agile can take many, many different formats in many different organizations. So you'll have a classic representation of the cross multidisciplinary team with a Scrum Master, a product manager, and an engineering manager. So in that context, the role of the Scrum Master would typically be the consumer of insights from Ojo, where we're automating the collection, the analysis, and the presentation of unique personalized insights for that team, so that the Scrum Master can then, in their servant leader way, help guide a conversation with the team in their ceremonies to facilitate accelerated learning. Now, if a team does not operate with a Scrum Master, that role typically would be the engineering manager or the tech lead. And so that tech lead is running and facilitating the team to, in partnership with a product manager, to deliver a set of requirements as defined by the business or by the product manager. And so the tech lead then has interest in ensuring that the requirements that they're getting, for example, in creating the plan, meet their ability to execute within the given time box of a sprint or an increment. They then will use insights to show how the team is progressing according to those set of requirements. If, for example, Umano or Ojo is saying that their completion rate is slower than usual, that their stability is less than usual because there's a lot of product changes, it gives the tech lead the confidence to go back to the product manager in this case and say, or the business, whoever their customer is, to say, hey, look, what we originally planned, we don't think we can meet because we've received a change of requirements mid-iteration. We're going to need to reprioritize. So we know through Ojo what our capacity is. So if we're going to hit the successful goals of a 100% completion or 80% or higher,
Mm.
ultimately we need your help to reprioritize and really get aligned on what can be delivered to ensure customer gets their value at the end of the sprint. So it's this constant kind of iterative process between either Scrum Master or the tech lead or the product manager, ultimately to continuously observe the inputs into how the team works so that they can tweak those to get better outputs and outcomes at the end of that iteration. And so they're the users of the tool, and the use cases, as I mentioned earlier, really to apply those insights into the jobs around planning, tracking, mid-sprint, and then retroing.
Okay. So what was the appetite for developing this product? Was it that you worked by yourself in a bigger organization? I assume it sounds like that your product is more for bigger organizations. So when my company has 3 people, then potentially I don't need your metrics and your tool. So yeah, what was the appetite for going in the direction I create now a product which helps bigger organization teams in bigger organizations to measure their progress, to identify gaps or problems, blockers, etc., on a better way. So tell us the story behind this.
Totally. So the original inspiration for Umano came for me in my first product leader role. It was the APAC regional entity of a US headquartered but global operation. And it was the first time the product function had been created for the APAC region, where it was consolidating the product capability across 4 business units. And so in my team, I had product managers, I had data science, and BAs. We were working in partnership, obviously, with the delivery teams, being the core engineering capability. And the role of the company was to really go from 100 to 150 million in 3 years through this accelerated product delivery capability. In the 10 years prior to my joining, under private equity, the company only delivered, I think, 2 or 3 products. Successful as they were, there was a lot of latent opportunity to build and create more product in response to a highly dynamic and a highly changing market. When I joined, we had new owners, being the corporate headquarters that brought us back. And so in this new market and operating environment, it was very clear about all systems go, huge expectation of goals. And so I, as product lead, was super clear on what we had to deliver, far less clear being my first role in this capability of how to deliver consistently, successfully, predictably, sustainably, repeatably. I observed the team's inflow. The teams that were high performing were punching well and truly above their weight in terms of the roadmap, value that was delivered. And I was like, what is the magic sauce and ingredients going on with those guys? Because they, unfortunately, were not the norm. They were unique. And so I wanted to codify what they were doing and then share that knowledge across the broader organization to lift the capability of everyone. And I think, I kind of pause here because everyone has at least one experience in their life of working for a high-performing team where you're in flow, where it's magnificent, where it's safe, the communication rocks, you're absolutely in sync, you can challenge each other, you're aligned. And that experience to me is high-performing. And so the unique ingredients to that are knowing how you work, the inputs, your practices, like a high-performing team of any construct or industry. So the skills at play, the practices that you apply to do that productively and effectively and efficiently, and to do it in a way that ensures it's sustainable, in a way that encourages joy, in a way that ensures you're bringing your best self to your work because you love it. So that means, back to the earlier observation of how do you measure high performance, we need to measure productivity and experience or engagement. We need facts and we need feelings. We need to see the whole picture so that we can have a nuanced conversation around what are the variables that are lagging and holding us back, as well as celebrating our strengths, celebrating what we do really, really well.
Okay,
and so
so
that's inspiration.
that's interesting. So means to summarize it a little bit, because you used the word ingredients, and now I have in my mind a chef, a cookbook, and so on. So means the appetite and what Umano is now is a little bit identifying ingredients for an amazing agile dish team, and writing this
Spot
in
on.
a cookbook that it could be
Love it.
shared with other people, that they can do the same.
Yeah, totally. And ultimately it's a cookbook that mirrors your team back to yourself, right? So you
Yeah.
can see yourself in your data
What you
objectively.
normally taste on your plate. So if
Spot on.
your plan with
Spot
a
on.
meal worked or worked not. Okay, yeah, interesting, good. So means I potentially will see a lot of new blog posts with a chef, cookbook stuff, etc. on the Umano page in the
Oh,
next
thank you
couple of weeks.
for the marketing inspiration and genius.
Cool, perfect. How big is the team at Umano? How many people are you?
So we have a core team of 5, and then we flex up or down with partners. And so our partners are include front-end capability, back-end capability, data science capability. And so it all depends on our roadmap
Yeah.
and what we're trying to execute and achieve at any point in time.
Okay, good. So, in the preparation for this podcast, so you answered a survey, and I mean, you talked about agile, also collaboration, and that collaboration need to have the right ingredients, and right ingredients are often meetings as well, or ceremonies. So, and the survey is mostly focused on the meeting part, with a little bit direction stand-up meetings. I mean, we have this app, NASA, not another stand-up app, which is also sponsoring this podcast here. But what we want to do with this survey is that you and every future guest need to answer the survey. And we will learn a little bit from your experience, but we will also see the differences. So let me share your answers, and then let's discuss it a little bit. And there's maybe an interesting story behind one or two answers. So let's go to this. So the first group of questions is about journaling, because we are strongly believe, and that what we faced when we moved with resolution to a 4-day week, and we analyzed all our meetings and especially our stand-ups, we figured out missing preparation leads automatically to bad meetings. So, and we're asking some questions here to you. And you said, for example, that I focus on what's relevant for my teammates and where I need help. You said, okay, strongly agree. Number 5 is strongly agree. That's a maximum here. The number 6 doesn't exist as answer type. So I'm trying to do the same. Do you have maybe a good tip when you prepare a stand up, how you identify the interesting points for your teammates, what is worth to share, and so on? Do you have a short tip how you do it?
I think for me, the difference between a good stand-up and a bad stand-up is the extent to which I prepare. And so I think, we'll come to that question. But more often than not, I will come screaming into a stand-up from literally switch off a Zoom from one meeting and then open up a Zoom for the stand-up meeting. And so the context of that is we are a distributed remote global team. And so depending on the product roadmap, we could have at any point up to 12 different team members dialing in for that stand-up Zoom. Okay. And so being remote, it's Zoom culture, in, out, in, out. However, the tip that I share is literally it takes 2 minutes. What's the goal of the sprint? What are my tasks that I'm active on? And where am I getting any blocks if needs be? And so that's my preparation that helps me step into best serving the team as well, right? Because if I can come back to the goal and have the sprint goal front and center, it becomes a very easy yardstick to go, okay, when I'm talking about that, it's not related to the goal, or defer, or we'll pick it up later. And so it's helping the team also create focus on what's most relevant for the team sprint goal.
Okay,
so that would be my tip.
Interesting. So it means you try to remember in every stand-up, or to remind people also on what's the goal for the actual cadence.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one. Cool. Good. You communicate in a concise and engaging way. Yes. Not you agree with that. Okay. Interesting.
Sometimes I can crap on. Sometimes.
So this
Most of
leads
the time.
then
I'd
to.
love to, by the way, I'd love to see my team answer this. This is what I think. I'd love to see what they think.
I can share the Survey Monkey with you, then you can do it with your team. So I think that this point is a little bit related also to meeting sticks to 15 minutes. So what was your longest stand-up meeting, or do you have every day super long stand-up meeting?
So again, it comes back to our unique context, being just remote and global. People are dialing in at different times, firstly, and at therefore different energy levels. So there's a cultural aspect to our stand-up where it could be the only daily interaction for a team member in a Zoom context. Of course, interactions occurring on Slack or email or Jira's or whatever, but this could be the only context. So when we open up the meeting, it's like a check-in in terms of coming back to our perspective on high performance being both productivity and experience. It's like, okay, how are you going? Are you happy? Are you did you sleep well? Are you in good form? That's part of the getting into gear and alignment for a successful conversation. Then we have the actual stand-up itself, and we try to keep a really disciplined approach to the actual 15-minute of, okay, the classic 3 questions, moving through them, and not deep diving into one ticket that may be blocked and why, and then trying to solve it. So trying to separate the stand-up content and context from then moving into problem resolution or specific ticket conversation.
Okay,
and so
got it.
Sometimes we won't be as structured, which is why it runs over. Typically, we try and do it in half an hour. The average time would be half an hour for us on a daily basis.
Okay, so means the let's say the proper stand-up part, really answering the questions, updating the team, and so on, you mostly stick to the time. So when it is extended, then it's more the socializing aspect, using the time as a remote team to discuss the weekend or other things and so on. Okay, yeah,
Yeah, and then
interesting.
doing the deep dive, the problem discovery stuff. So
Yeah, yeah, super, super interesting. Okay, so then maybe to the second category, active listening. So, I mean, you strongly agree here with nearly everything. Um, we learned that when people share uninteresting stuff, this leads to that people are not paying attention to the update and starting multitasking in most of the cases. And multitasking in a stand-up meeting often means opening my mail, Slack messages, whatever, finishing my Amazon order, etc. Um, so, and I also, for me, it's an everyday task in meetings to remind myself, hey Björn, listen to the update. Special, not in stand-up meetings, but also in longer meetings, it's relatively easy to get distracted and starting something else in parallel. And that's poison for effective meetings. So, what is your cheat to remind yourself on active listening? Is it easy for you, or do you have somehow a pattern what you try to do that you're really an active listener in your meetings?
I totally agree. Boredom leads to disinterest, leads to multitasking. And so for me, I have to catch myself. Like it's literally because it's a bad habit. You said that, right? Like that's all
Yeah.
it is. It's a bad habit. And so how do you stop a bad habit? You create awareness around it. How do you create awareness around it? It's just you just got to catch yourself and go, no, like it's I actually want to be present in the moment. And it's actually I choose to give my whole present self to the team. Um, and in that context, being present means you can be available. You may better respond if needs be, better support when it's needed, or just shut up, equally so. But you can
Mm.
only make those decisions when you're present. I think the other thing is that when you multitask, you slow everything down, right?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
you're not present, you're in another space, and then all of a sudden you're pulled back into the conversation. You're like, what? I've just missed the last 2 or 3 minutes of that conversation. I have no context. Please go back and repeat yourself. So in actual
Yeah,
fact,
or what happens often, or what I saw in the past, sometimes at Resolution, but also in previous companies, is that people then agree quickly to something because they don't want to be open that they haven't got the point totally. So they agree something, and they know I can disagree in the next meeting to it, and then re-roll it back or whatever. So
yeah,
especially in bigger organizations, I saw this relatively often.
yeah, I totally agree. Half hearing is not hearing. And also half hearing is actually really disrespectful to your
Yeah.
team members. Like, and because I get really pissed off too when I know I don't have the full attention of my team. Like, it's just disrespectful. So if I expect that of my team members, then they should expect that of me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. Respect is an important thing, and I think also a nice motivation for active listening.
Yeah.
When this is your only motivation, that's potentially the best motivation for doing it. Paying respect to your colleagues and teammates. Yeah, cool. Value delivery. So I did on the last Atlassian Team 24 in Las Vegas. We had a brain date, or we set up the brain date. Brain dates are these 45-minute meetings in the expo hall where strangers can join a specific meeting topic. So you have then relatively quick a meeting with 5, 6 strangers. And we set up the topic about stand-up meetings, and we had 6 attendees, and 3 of these attendees when they joined the group, they asked, okay, is this here these self-improvement group for stand-up meetings? Yeah, so a little bit like I'm addicted to alcohol or other drugs or whatever, or a silent hater of XYZ and I want to solve it. So, and this was super interesting because a lot of people are not seeing a huge value of stand-up meetings, because I strongly think that the main problem is that most of the organizations have bad stand-up meetings. So this decreases or limits totally the value. But the strange point is that everybody accepts this and is not changing something. So when we're now coming to value delivery, not just here, it's a little bit about stand-ups, but in general, of meetings and your experience with that, and also especially in the context of agile teams. So your answer is here that stand-up meetings help to align, especially in dynamic environments, to facing new problems, changes, and potentially adapting them, etc. But your answer to the team focus on the progress in stand-ups is neutral. So what is the context here that you say, yes, it helps us, but progress focus could be more? What's the story behind this?
Yeah, look, I think firstly, totally take your point around status quo of meetings leads to shit meetings, right? So if the quality of your meeting is poor, then of course you're not going to invest in that time spent together. And so how do you make it as lean and as efficient and as sharp and as punchy as possible, which I think is where, like a tool like NASA super helps, because it's creating focus. And so the question of focus then in that short, sharp time together is critical. So what are you focused on? Where is the energy and the attention? And sometimes, and most times, yeah, it's on the goals, right? Sometimes, however, I should say, not you, we get a bit lost in the weeds. So we can kind of, the goal is at the meta level, but then we go down to the micro level. Whoop, there's my little animation. We go down to the micro level in actual work items, and we can get lost and lose focus and get dragged into the detail. And that's not the point. The point of the stand-up is that meta check-in, super efficient, super lean, and really, really focused. So that's why I've said, it can work so long as you stay meta and so long as you don't go micro. There's another, switch context for micro, stay meta.
Okay. So what is, I know in the past you also worked, and I don't know, maybe you do it from time to time and nowadays as well. So your profession was also to help organizations as a coach, especially in an agile context, in classic Scrum context, and so on. So, and I just assume now that your customers were organizations who are starting with it or trying to fixing broken agile structures, environments, frameworks, whatever. So let's focus a little bit on organizations for a moment who are doing this since a while. What would you say is the most common mistake when you have implemented an agile framework in your organization, that agile is not proper working? What is your first thing? What comes to your mind? Mistakes? What you saw on your customers? What you then need to fix as a coach?
Bureaucracy. Ironically, agile.
Based in Germany, we definitely know how to do bureaucracy.
Well, so ironically, the promise of agile is agility, where you have the confidence and the freedom to course correct and ultimately stay very clearly focused on value for the customers in delivering a great experience for them. Where Agile fails and companies struggle with seeing the return on investment from investing in the change and the infrastructure of Agile, is that it becomes, it does focus on process over people. It's like the antithesis of all of the 12 principles. And the irony is, we kind of because it's new, because it's unpredictable, because it's unknown, we create safety through structure and systems. And so we feel safe and strong and confident when we have structure and rules and way to do it, and like, it's not like that. It's like this. I was like, that is just bullshit. You define how it works best for you. That's why they're called principles. They're not called rules.
Yeah.
And so how are principles interpreted for your unique context? That's where I see it go wrong all the time.
So that's an interesting answer in the context of that your company and your product is working with metrics and KPIs, which are often identified as we need to hit this KPI. It's a rule. We need to do it in this direction and so on. So how do you help organizations? I mean, it's not just Umano. I think also other BI tools and so on are often misinterpreted. I also see it when we discuss it with our team that in some cases it's not important to understand if a graph is on 5 or 10. It's important to understand how the graph changed in the last couple of weeks or months. So because a lot of I don't know if it's the human nature that people going to total amount of something, which makes it difficult when I now take your aspect that teams or organizations lead to maybe setting up too much bureaucracy when they implementing or maintaining their agile framework. Then in parallel, you give them a tool which could be relatively easy identified as part of the bureaucracy. So
yeah, totally.
How do you help organizations with this conflict?
It's such a good question. Thank you for asking that. I'm going to come back to basics, right? Forget Agile. There is an innate human nature that is to continuously learn, grow, expand, experience, right? This is the evolution of human nature. What stops us from becoming our best selves, highest performing selves, whether it's work or life, is resistance to change, ultimately. And so part of the Agile construct is about enabling continuous improvement and evolution in the construct or organism of an organization. And so it's this set of principles that help adaptation, continuous improvement, learning, experimentation. And so that is the primary mission of Umano as a tool to accelerate learning. It's a continuous learning tool by visualizing where you're at based on a set of signals, both quantitative and qualitative, so you can be equipped and empowered to change course, take action, realign, reprioritize, do whatever you need to do to stay agile. And so exactly to your question around the role of metrics, an anti-pattern in the implementation of metrics and measuring is that you serve it and it does not serve you. In other words, you're a slave to the number and you change everything based on the number. And that is a total anti-pattern that undermines safety, that undermines agility, and undermines your ability to learn and take action to evolve. So how do we help customers identify anti-patterns like that and ultimately stay pure in intent when they deploy a data-driven way of working? We help them define their guiding principles. Come back to Agile. Agile has 12 set of principles, guiding principles. Come back to, we want to measure, to do whatever. Okay, what are your company guiding principles? And in this, we really encourage our customers and our partners to get very clear on their intention and communicate that intention so that they are aligned. So, for example, what's the relationship between measurement and metrics and your company values? In other words, the behaviors. What's the role of transparency? Is insight only going to be held at the leadership level, or are you going to roll it out across your entire team? Does the team itself get access to their own data? On the context of transparency and psychological safety, are insights and metrics used only and seen only by the team or by the entire organization? These are the types of principles we get customers to define so that they're building psychologically safe, really equipped and empowered learning cultures that underpins the implementation of metrics to achieve the outcome of continuous learning, continuous improvement, performance growth, acceleration. What's really interesting is in Google's DORA, so DevOps Research and Assessment team, where they measured all of their engineering teams to understand the 4 key metrics that gave insight into what high performance looks like.
Okay.
Those teams that were using those 4 DORA metrics had a direct link not only to team performance, but to company performance, where the company improved 30%. Their organizational performance improvement was 30%. Now that is continuous learning for higher performing cultures, companies, teams, right? Yeah. So draw the link, know that it's about a bigger outcome, make sure you're aware of the anti-patterns, get super clear on the guiding principles so that everyone is clear in understanding how data will and will not be used to drive growth. That's it.
Okay. So means to summarize it a little bit, or picking just, no, it's not summarizing, it's picking out one point which I find super interesting. So one principle of Agile is what you get in every course and mostly in every slide deck on page 3 when you talk about Agile is being open for change. So means it's not just the change which is driven from the project or product what you're doing. It's also being open for change, changing yourself, learning. So that's your message. And in this, it's not a one-sided change to you, also change yourself.
Yeah, totally agree. Because it's, the team is the construct by which value is created, most often than not. So you show up as a member of a team, you bring a belief system where that ultimately elevates or undermines not only your performance, but the collective team performance. Well, how do you become aware? Ultimately, data. So data as quantitative signals or qualitative signals give you a mirror to make a choice. Do I want to take action, or do I want to bury my head in the sand and not care? And surprise, surprise, become another Kodak and become irrelevant because we're not evolving, we're not growing, and not changing. Like, that's the cold, hard reality, that unless we continue to adapt and grow and evolve, we won't keep up. We just won't.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Nice aspect. So yeah, when all the people who are showing this or hearing this at the moment want to understand more, reach out to Chris for that. You definitely can have an interesting chat, interesting discussion about the topics. Let's move to the next point of the podcast and also the last point of the podcast. So the name of the show is Bring Your Own Directions. So and I explained to you in the preparation so that you can exchange the D. For me, it's interesting. What is your topic? So, like, not bring your own direction. So, what would be your topic for it? Bring your own
Data.
data. Okay, that makes totally sense to what we discussed so far. I will share my screen now. So, in the preparation, you also answered 3 questions. So we are using NASA here a little bit as a moderation tool. It's not the original idea of NASA, but it helps us to visualize a little bit our questions and also your answers. So let me share this. And here we go. So the first question in the category Bring Your Own Directions, and in your case, also data, we are asking for what was a challenge, an interesting one? I mean, we discussed already in meetings you should talk about interesting stuff, not the stomach problems of your dog. So, what was an interesting challenge you have faced recently where you couldn't find a playbook or best practices? So, where you really need to figure out, okay, how can I solve this? So, I need to do research and so on. And this is nowadays and super interesting question because a lot of people just open ChatGPT now and asking for, okay, what is a playbook here? So, I mean, that's part of the solution. But your answer here is expanding into the Indian market. So, take us a little bit on this journey. What was the challenge here?
You bet. So we, Humano, as a scale up, have existing customers in the US and in Europe. And to the point of data, we were getting signals from those customers that had cross-border teams, not only in, for example, North America, but also in India. And as a data point, we were getting quantitative insights from our customers that the software engineering market in India was a huge force for value creation for companies. And so I wanted to better understand this market. It is literally on my doorstep, being in Australia. So it's in my region, but yet so often
I was saying to India, it's on your doorstep.
well, you know, 9 hours away. It's all relative, Bjorn. It's all relative.
Okay.
But it's like, so we kind of assume to other markets in our context without kind of really thinking strategically and looking at new opportunities for growth. And so for us, the more I investigated this as a market where Humano may play a role in elevating software engineering team performance and DevX, the movement of DevX, I thought, yeah, actually, this totally makes sense for us. What's unique is there is no playbook, right? Every company, because of its unique proposition, construct, product, has to create a very unique market entry strategy. And so for us, you could read, you could use ChatGPT to pull out, market stats of growth and drivers and market forces and all of that sort of stuff. But what was missing was the qualitative data points. And so for me, that meant I had to be on the ground. I had to meet leaders in the industry. I had to really get that market interaction to test my data hypothesis that this was a market that Umano could create value in. So that was, as a scale up, we're always looking for new markets, new opportunities. India presented. When I did the quantitative market research, it showed up as being, positive in terms of those signals. So I then wanted to do qualitative market research in terms of getting in, interviewing, meeting different segments, speaking with different prospective channels and others that had done this before, so that I could gather our data points to make our unique playbook for how we consider going to market. So yeah, that was the challenge in the last 6 months that we faced,
Okay.
and needed data to help make an informed decision.
Okay. And I mean, you said that was a journey and the challenge the last 6 months, and that was, or you followed now, created your own playbook with. I documented it here a little bit. The get your boots on the ground, so going on site and so on. Having a lot of conversations, etc., and generating your own data. So, what is your point at the moment? So you have now the data. You can now make the right decisions for your go-to-market strategy in India, or what is the actual status quo?
Yeah. So, because of that market research and those market visits, we've made decisions. So, an example of a decision is we know the segment that we want to focus on is primarily IT service consultants and scale ups.
Okay.
IT service consultants, number one, scale ups, number two. We also have made a decision that our best, fastest path to market is through channel partners.
Yeah.
So we've now identified our prospect list of channel partners that we can partner with and support for them to be in market and represent us to build our brand, build our presence, and ultimately sell Umano into that unique context. So that's another classic decision, right? You could do it digitally, you could build your own sales force on the ground, or
Yeah.
you could go to your channel partners. So that's
Yeah.
another decision that we made.
Cool. That sounds super interesting. I wish you all the best with this go-to-market. I
Thank
mean,
you.
India is not a small
No,
country.
no.
Um, so, yeah, it's. I think it will be challenging, but yeah, I wish you all the best for that. Okay, That perfectly leads to to the second question. Question number two. Uh, so, what did you face in the next 6 months?
So then the next 6 months is, okay, we've made these decisions. Now we want active presence. In other
Yeah.
words, we want a customer POC, proof of concept, with a channel partner. And so that now is our focus. We've got a set of things that we're working through. Again, data to help define and assess who are the best channel partners to back and invest our time and energy into. Creating the data to help.
Local channel partners in India, or is this now the partner pilot global? You also do it in other countries, other continents.
Well, so we already have a partner program in other markets. So, for example, we have Sebastian, who's our CRO out of Berlin. He's really working very hard to build out our European partner network right now. That's a core focus of ours in that market. And so what learnings do we have from that we can then adapt for the unique context of India and the unique channel partners in India and the unique way of doing business in India? So that's now the focus for the next 6 months is selecting the channel partner or the top three, and then and working with them to build and secure a proof of concept of a joint go-to-market between Umano and a partner to sell Umano and the partner services into an Indian customer.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's. I mean, it's a huge opportunity, and we are living at the moment in some days a strange world. So the economy is not in the best increase ever globally. So it's different from country to country. So Germany, at the moment, when you open the newspaper, we are back to the situation being the sick man in Europe. So in other economies like United States and so on, you have an interesting growth rate at the moment, an acceptable growth rate. And I think when you compare it with Asia Pac, you have complete different stories there. So much higher growth
Like a
rates, but
classic.
also
You are spot on. Like a classic narrative in the Australian context is an over dependency on US and UK, and China. And so, interestingly, our culture now, our business narrative is that we actually received a backlash from being overly dependent on China in an Australian GDP context, where we did something politically that caused a loss of face in the Chinese political context, and they imposed implicit trade barriers on a range of our top industries, right? So companies that were producing and selling lobster and wine and coal and whatever, all of a sudden were faced with finding and shifting new markets to reduce their market dependency on China. And India was absolutely one of those markets in the Australian context and narrative, where there's a lot of synergies, a lot of similarities culturally, where they have incredible workhorse and work horsepower in terms of the workforce, and Australia has a unique context of being and having a very strong IP creation, and so the power of blending these two creates a new global opportunity for us. So I love that you bring that kind of global context in. Because it's very true. As business owners and leaders, we are constantly looking for diversifying and de-risking.
And be open for change. So, well, again, the agile topic here.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Thank you. Question number 3 and the last question. So that's normally the question what you have in a job interview, where you shouldn't. The most funny answer what I got in a job interview, I was not the person who was applying for the job. I was the interviewer, and I asked the question, okay, to the person who applied for the job, what's your plan for being in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, a classic one, yeah. And the answer was from this person, it was an amazing answer, was, I want to sit on your chair. So that was, I can't remember if I hired the person, but I remember on this answer. So now this question to you, where are you planning to be in 1 year?
I love the ambition of that. Thank you very much. So in 1 year's time, I want 30% of the company's revenue, new revenue, coming from our focus on the Indian market. So there's a very clear thread there that I've been sharing with you as to market discovery, taking small steps, and then ultimately by the end of 12 months, we've moved from crawling beyond walking, and hopefully we're running in that market.
Okay, cool. So means when we talk from now on in a year, you're potentially still based in Sydney or somewhere in India then?
I will still be based in Sydney. I hope to be spending more time in the Indian market with our incredible partners and customers. And who knows, we may even have our first hire in market as a direct channel lead, and even Indian market country lead that's there to
Perfect.
really accelerate and serve our partners.
Perfect. Last question. So I know you are always busy also with traveling, going to conferences and so on. So for any people in the audience, when they want to meet you in person, so what are the next events in 2025 where you are on site? I know Atlassian Team 25 in April is definitely one event. Are there other events where you're going?
Yeah, absolutely. So then the Agile India conference, which will be in Bangalore in March, at the end of March. We will also be in Europe for the Atlassian team event there, assuming that they're going to have that as a repeat
Okay,
of
it was like an
2024.
announcement. Do you know more?
No,
Okay.
however, we're as you guys are, we're ready to jump.
Okay.
And then also, like, so last year we were at the SAFE Summit in Washington, and like I think maintaining connection with the SAFE and Agile community, both Scrum and Agile Alliance, is really critical, because we want to know how the industry and how the sector is evolving itself, and what is continuously changing in their response to their customers' adoption of Agile, Scrum, and SAFE. So yeah, anywhere there's those gathering of people, then we'd love to be there.
Perfect. Cool. So means when you want to meet Chris in person, reach out to him. Best case, I assume via LinkedIn, Chris Boyce Umano. Then you can find him. Chris, thanks a lot for taking the time today for this amazing conversation. I learned a lot of new stuff, and yeah, looking forward to the next time. And all the best for your plan in India and the 30% revenue share in 1 year.
Thank you, Björn. And don't ditch the stand up. Make it work for you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Have a great one.
See you. Bye.